Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to another episode of The Happy Heretic. And today, I thought I would go through some of the essentials that you are going to need if you want to start painting your minis with oils. Now, anybody who knows me, who follows me on social media, knows that I use oil paints on almost all of my minis in some fashion. I've got a work in progress right here of a Death Guard Plague Marine painted almost entirely with oil paints. Just the metal parts are acrylics, and the bone parts here are acrylics as well. But everything else was done with oils. I got a couple of other samples here as well. Oops, and of course I got a wire falling down. Yeah, that's the level of production value that you're dealing with here. So anyway, yeah, I use oil paints on almost all of my minis. It's something that I really think everybody should at least experiment with, because at the very least, you can use oil paints for some pretty good weathering effects and some pin washing and things like that. Best case scenario, you use oil paints for everything, like I'm trying to do. So, but it's one of those things that a lot of people some people have heard about, but they're not really sure what they might need to get started. And it's really, to get started with oil painting, there's not a whole lot of stuff that you need. There's some things that you need, of course, but I'll tell you about just some of the basic items that you're going to want to get. Of course, the first thing that you're going to need is oil paints. If you don't have oil paints, you ain't going to be putting oil paints on your minis. So you got a couple of options out there. There's all sorts of different kinds of oil paints and different brands of oil paints. This one right here is Grumbacher Academy Pale Pink, which I really like for flesh tones. It's a really good color. There's others out there. Winsor & Newton is kind of considered the standard with a lot of things, and a lot of people love their artist oil paints. There's also Old Holland is probably one of the oldest oil paint brands, also one of the most expensive. And then you've got places like AK Interactive and Abteilung that create oil paints specifically for scale modelers and miniatures and that sort of thing. So, whatever you want to do. I've got the Grumbacher oil paint right here. I've also got some real cheap oil paints in some 12 millimeter dropper bottles. Let me see if I can get the box that they came in. This is the set that I started with. Crappy little 24 oil paint set. As it had a nice range of colors. I got this for $15 off of Amazon. They're 12 milliliter tubes, so not a whole lot, but enough to get you started. So, but whatever you need, whatever you want, pick up what's affordable for you. I'm going to have another video at a later time where I kind of go through what the difference is between regular oil paints and artist grade oil paints, and what you should look for, and whether or not it's as expensive as people think it is. Spoiler alert, yes and no. Yes and no is the best answer for that. So now, moving along, the thing to remember about oil paints is they are very, very, very thick. If you can see this tube of Grumbacher, I have no idea if I'm pronouncing that right, but you can see the consistency on there. It's like toothpaste. It's very, very, very thick. You're going to want to thin it down. Now, a lot of people talk about using things like artist white spirits, and there's other thinners out there as well. You can use different oils to thin oil paints and get kind of different effects. Let them dry more satin, let them dry more matte, or speed the drying time or slow the drying time. A whole lot of ways that you can play with them. A whole lot of things that you can do. But the most basic thinner that I use, Odorless mineral spirits. This is a quart jug. I got this at Walmart, but you can find it You can find it at any hardware store, any paint supply store, any big box store for, you know, a quart or larger. I think I've seen up to a gallon or so of odorless mineral spirits. Very important that you get the odorless kind, otherwise it's going to stink up your house or apartment or hobby area. With odorless mineral spirits, you still have an odor. It's not truly odorless, but it's not as bad as just using straight paint thinner. You definitely can do that if you want, but just beware, it's going to stink like hell. This big jug, about $4 or so, and this will last me, depending on how much I paint, about a month, roughly. So about $4 a month for thinner. It works out pretty well. Another thing you're going to want, you're going to be finding that you're mixing paint a lot when it comes to oil paints, whether you're mixing them with thinner in order to get them to a workable consistency and something that will dry within a reasonable amount of time, or whether you're mixing different colors together. And you want a palette that is not porous. So you're not going to use a wet palette. That's a bad idea. Don't do that. It's not going to work anyway because oil paints are not water soluble. Oil and water don't mix. So you need a palette that is non-porous. This one is aluminum, metal. I don't know if you can hear that, just me tapping on it. And this one is part of a pack of 3 that I got off of Amazon for, I think it was $5. And it's you know, it's got 6 wells in it. So I can, you know, put paint in here. I can mix it up with thinner. I can put just straight thinner in here if I want to clean something up or erase a mistake or something like that. Very, very handy thing to have. You don't have to get something like this, by the way. If you've got like an old plate, or if you've got like a ceramic tile or something like that. I've seen people use like panes of glass, even just something that's non-porous and that's not going to react with the thinner. That's what you need to be able to mix your paints pretty effectively. The other thing that you'll need is a container for your thinner. I got right here this glass jar, I guess. I don't know if it was like a decorative jar or a mason jar or something, but I use this for cleaning my brushes, because again, oil paints are not water soluble, so you're going to be using thinner to clean your brushes. And you want something that's not going to react with it, so glass is good. I also keep another glass container. This was an old baby food jar that I had lying around, and this has got clean mineral spirits in it, relatively clean. There might be a bug or two floating around in there, but this is what I'll take from when I'm using the thinner to mix my paints and thin them down, because taking directly from this big ass jug, it's a pain in the ass. Pour it out of the jug, put it in a smaller container, hell of a lot better. Now that segues into the next one. You might hear a dog scratching at the door. Give me a second, let me open that, get him out of here. So another thing that is not a critical tool, but is a very useful tool for the miniature oil painter, or for any miniature painter really, pipettes. Pipettes are going to be very, very handy when you are mixing your oil paints with your thinner. You take you put a little bit of oil on the palette, a little bit of oil paint on the palette, you suck up some thinner in the pipette, put the thinner on the palette, mix it up, and you're good to go. It makes it very, very easy, a lot less messy than just pouring it straight from whatever container you're using. So you don't have to get these, but you can get these off of Amazon. You can get like a pack of 100 for $5 or even less sometimes, maybe. Just kind of do some research, do some shopping around. Very, very cheap, inexpensive, and very, 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 very useful. Highly recommend. Even if you don't use oil paints, I still use these if I need to mix up acrylics and things like that, just because they're so freaking handy to have around. And then last but not least, get all this stuff out of the way, the most essential tool of any painter, anywhere, but especially the oil painter. Brushes, and more brushes. And this isn't even all the brushes I've got. I've still got a hell of a lot more sitting around that never get used or get used only once or twice for various jobs. But you're going to want brushes, of course, for your oil paints. Specifically, you're going to want synthetic brushes. You don't want to be using your sable brushes on these. You don't want to be using your expensive Artist Opus brushes or your Squidmar Kickstarter brushes or your Raphael, Kolinsky brushes or whatever expensive brush brand you use normally. You don't want to use that stuff with oil paints because the thinner destroys brushes. I mean, it'll absolutely wreck your brushes completely. There's no two ways about it. Stay away from the natural brushes when you're doing oil painting. It's going to be a waste of money. It's going to be a lot better option are going to be cheap brushes that you can get from any hobby store, any craft supply store, Amazon. These brushes, this one right here, this is a brand called Royal and Langnickel. I got like a pack of 5 or 6 of these from Walmart for I think $2.50, and they're actually fairly decent brushes compared to, considering they're just crappy synthetics compared to some of the other brushes out there. These actually held up fairly well compared to some of the other brands. But yeah, get yourself some synthetic brushes. You're going to want a variety of brushes for a variety of tasks. You can see I've got some large base coat brushes on here, none of which have a tip. These are all old and well used. You'll use these for laying down base coating. You'll use these for smoothing things out and stuff like that. I've got this brush right here is my favorite, this long thin brush that no longer has a point but when it's dry, but has a point when it's wet. This brush I actually use for pin washing and weathering and things like that on a lot of my minis. So this brush right here sees a lot of use, but these synthetic brushes are going to be a much better value and much better option for you than getting expensive natural brushes. These may not last you very long, but that's okay, because if you're paying $2 for a pack of 5 brushes and the brushes collectively are lasting you a month or more, that's compared to like what, $20-$25 for a more expensive brush that might last you a couple of weeks if you're doing oil paints. These are going to be the much better value for you. So stay away from the natural brushes, get the synthetic brushes. That being said, if you've got some natural brushes that are approaching the ends of their lives and you want to use them for oil painting as like smoothing brushes and that sort of thing, you definitely can do it. If you want to completely ignore my advice and just dive in using natural hair brushes, you certainly can do that as well. A lot of the natural brushes that we use are also I don't want to say rated because there's not really a rating, but they can also be used with oil paints. You can use whatever brushes you want. It's just, in my experience, the better value is going to be the crappy synthetic brushes. And you can get the same level, arguably you can get the same level of work, the same level of quality out of a crappy synthetic brush that you can with a really good natural brush, at least with regards to oil paints and that sort of thing. So anyway, that's all there is to it. There's not a whole lot of stuff that you need to get started with oil painting. I mean, just some crappy oil paints, some thinner, some brushes, some minis, and Bob's your uncle, you're good to go. Again, I'll have, you know, a series of videos kind of explaining more of the details with oil painting and more of the nuances behind it and things like that, and how things actually work. I think my next video is going to be, like I said, just a little bit of an exploration of the kind of expense that you can expect to see with regards to your oil paints specifically. Yeah, that'll come out in probably a couple of weeks, maybe next week. But anyway, let me know what you think about all this in the comment section below. If I forgot anything that you think might be an essential tool for a beginning oil painter, let me know in that comment section. As always, if you liked what you heard, like and subscribe to my channel. Both those things would help me out quite a bit, and I will see you all next time.